उपविष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूप कदा मह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकम्। वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरु श्रीयुतापदकमलं श्रीगुरुन् वैष्णवांश्च श्रीरूपं साग्रजातां सहगना रघुनाथान्वितां तां सजीवं साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजनसहितं कृष्ण चैतन्यदेवं श्रीराधाकृष्णपदान् सहगना ललिता श्रीविशाखान्वितांश्च। हे कृष्ण करुणा सिंधु दीनबंधु जगतपते गोपेश गोपिका कांता राधा कांता नमोस्तुते। तप्त कांचन गौरांगी श्री राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी वृष्णभानुसुत देवे प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये। वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्त वृंदा। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे।
हरे हरे।
Hare Krishna. So we were discussing we were having an overview of chapter 7 through 12, because the chapter 7 through 12 are the bhakti sections of the Gita, and then we had completed the 12th chapter last week. So we were doing an overview of all the chapters 7 through 12, and yesterday we had completed until, so we had done a, like, first we had done a flow of discussion that is happening between Krishna and Arjuna. So we completed that from the beginning of the Gita until the 12th chapter, and then we started focusing on these 6 chapters 7 through 12. So we completed the first 2 chapters. Basically we completed the overview of chapter 7 and chapter 8, and today we have to start from chapter 9. But before we start, I just wanted to mention quickly what we discussed in chapter 7 and 8, just at a high level. So, chapter 7, the theme was the knowledge of the absolute. So, in the chapter 7, Krishna introduced bhakti in a focused way for the first time. So, he did talk about bhakti earlier, but he did not focus on it much. But in the 7th chapter, the focus is a lot on bhakti. So the goal of bhakti is given right in the first verse of Gita, of 7th chapter, where he says, Mainyasakta manaha, make your mind attached to me. So that is the goal of bhakti. So actually in the 7th chapter, then Krishna describes how he is the essence of everything. And then he actually also glorifies himself. He also says that, there is no truth superior to him. Mattaha partaram na anyat. So actually many people, they say that, in the Gita, not just in the 7th chapter, but overall, even if you look at the 10th chapter, 9th chapter, 11th chapter. So basically, people say that Krishna brags a lot in the Bhagavad Gita. So now, what Krishna does is not actually bragging, but what is happening in the Gita is, so in the 7th chapter, if you see, in the 4th chapter itself, Krishna first tells to Arjuna that, Arjuna, you should go and surrender to a spiritual master and attain knowledge from a spiritual master. And when you attain the knowledge from a spiritual master, he says, what is the consequence of attaining the knowledge from a spiritual master? He says, you will see the connection of all living entities with me. So now, when he comes to the 7th chapter, when he's introducing bhakti, so when we have to practice bhakti, if we have to worship someone, we have to be convinced of his greatness. So actually, Krishna then speaks about his greatness. So first point is he has to give knowledge to Arjuna. Arjuna has actually surrendered to Krishna in every sense. Right now, Krishna is Arjuna's guru. So he's giving that knowledge. He's giving the ultimate knowledge to Arjuna. He says that in the 7th chapter, right in the beginning, he says that after knowing this, nothing else will remain for you to know. Yagyatva neha bhuyona jgyatvayam avashishyate. Nothing else will remain for you to know. So in that sense also, he is giving the topmost knowledge to Arjuna. He is of Arjuna. And one more important thing is that Acharya has explained that the reason Krishna glorifies himself so much in the Gita, that is because ultimately he wants to glorify bhakti. He says that this is how glorious I am, yet I get conquered by bhakti. So just think how glorious the bhakti is. So that is the idea. So it's not exactly bragging. It's just that it is the truth. What Krishna is speaking is the truth, and that truth has to be spoken, so that the knowledge has to be given. It is to be given to Arjuna, and through Arjuna it has to come to us also. So that is basically the theme of the 7th chapter, knowledge of the absolute. So Krishna gives the knowledge to Arjuna. In the 8th chapter, the theme was attaining the supreme. So in the end of the 7th chapter, Krishna talks about remembering Krishna at the time of death. So that becomes the impetus, and Arjuna immediately asks that question, how can a person know you at the time of death? So then Krishna elaborates. So first Krishna says that, whoever at the end of his life remembers me, yam yam vapi smaran muktva tyajate anta kalevaram. He says that whoever remembers me at the time of death, he will attain me for sure. And then he mentions that actually whatever state one remembers at the time of passing away from this world, that state he will attain for sure. So that is what Krishna mentions. And then he compares bhakti yoga and jnana yoga. So if the goal is to think about Krishna at the time of death, then what is easier? Is it easy to think about Krishna through bhakti yoga, or is it easy to think about Krishna through Ashtanga yoga? I'm sorry, not Jnana yoga. So he compares the Ashtanga yoga and the bhakti yoga in the 8th chapter, and then he establishes that bhakti is very easy. Tasyaham sulabha partha nitya yuktasya yoginam. That is the 8.14 verse that we had discussed. And because the theme of the 8th chapter is attaining the supreme, we see that Srila Prabhupada in his commentary, in the first 10 verses, Prabhupada quotes the full Hare Krishna mantra 5 times. Full mantra, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. He just doesn't say that, by chanting the Hare Krishna mantra. He quotes the full mantra 5 times in the first 10 verses of the 8th chapter. Because by chanting Hare Krishna, we can attain the supreme. So that is more or less the theme of the 8th chapter. And then the 8th chapter ends with the classic verse. We had discussed it. Let me share my screen quickly. Are you able to see my screen now?
Yes, Prabhu.
Okay. So the 8th chapter ends with the classic verse, Vedeshu yageshu tapah suchaiva daneshu yat punya phalam pradishtam. A person who accepts the path of devotional service is not bereft of the results derived from studying the Vedas, performing sacrifices, undergoing austerities. So he gets all of that, and he attains much more than that. And Prabhupada says in the purport that Krishna consciousness is success in one shot. So that is where the 8th chapter ends. Now in the 9th chapter, the name of the chapter is the most confidential knowledge. So Krishna actually continues speaking. There is no question from Arjuna, but Krishna spontaneously keeps talking about it. So spurti, as we call it, spontaneously, spurti. There is no other impetus from outside. Spontaneously from that impetus is coming from inside, because he has given the knowledge about devotional service in the 7th and 8th chapter. Now he wants to make Arjuna steady in the devotional service. So he continues to speak the glories of devotional service in the 9th chapter. So he pours out his heart over here in the 9th chapter, how much Krishna loves his devotees. That is what he tells. So the name of the chapter is the most confidential knowledge. And right in the first verse, Krishna makes it very clear. Idam tute guhyatamam pravakshyami anusuyave jnana vijnana sahitam yagyatva mokshasya shubhat. Guhyatamam, this is the most confidential knowledge, Arjuna, that I'm going to give it to you. So the first 3 verses, Krishna first glorifies the knowledge that he is going to give to Arjuna. And then he basically starts talking about, so he is giving the knowledge about himself again here. So he first talks about the same theme that was there in the 7th chapter, his relationship with the material world. So his relationship with the material world, he first, talks very enigmatically, like it's like Upanishadic language, So the 9.4 and 9.5 are sometimes they appear to be very contradictory. So let's see what those were. 9.4, Krishna says, Maya tatam idam sarvam jagadavyakta murtina matsthani sarva bhutani na chaham teshu avastita. Maya tatam idam sarvam jagadavyakta murtina. By me in my unmanifested form, this unmanifested form, the whole world is pervaded. Matsthani sarva bhutani. All living beings are situated in me. But nachaham teshu avastita. But I am not situated in them. So this sounds very confusing, because first Krishna says that all the living beings are me, but he says, but I am not in them. So It's very enigmatic words Krishna is using, and this same enigmatic tone will continue in the Jnana section. We'll see in the 13th chapter onwards, Krishna will speak in these terms. Very, very enigmatic language he will use in the Jnana section of the Gita. So the meaning of this verse is explained by Baldev Vidya Bhushan in Siddhanta Darpan. So he says that Maya tatam idam sarvam jagadavyakta murtina. This refers to Brahman. The Brahma Jyoti is spread all over. It pervades the whole entire creation. So that is Brahman. Mat sthani sarva bhutani. All living beings are situated in me. That is Paramatma. Because Paramatma is sustaining all the living entities. He is sustaining the material world, and he is also sustaining all the living entities. He is there in each and every atom and molecule of this universe. And nachaham teshu avasthita. I am not in them. So as Bhagavan, as the supreme personality, he is not in this material world. No, he is beyond this material world. So remember, we had talked about immanence and transcendence when we were discussing the 7th chapter. So immanence is Krishna's present within the material world, and transcendence is, he is transcendental to the material world, to the material universe. So those two things are talked about here. So his relationship is what is Krishna describing here, his relationship with the material world. Now in 9.5, Krishna says something opposite, something contradictory. He says, Nachamat sthani bhutani pashyame yogameshwaram bhuta bhran nacha bhutastho mamatma bhuta bhavana. Now just now in 9.4, Krishna had said, Mat sthani sarva bhutani. That is what he had said. And in 9.5, he's saying, Nacha mat sthani bhutani. The living beings are not situated in me. So what does it mean? He says, Pashya me yogameshwaram. Just see my divine opulence. So what does this mean? Actually, Acharya explained that, Krishna is not burdened by sustaining the living entities. That is the meaning. And he makes it clear in the next verse. He gives an example. He says, Yatha akash sthito nityam vayu sarvatra go mahan tatha sarvani bhutani mat sthaniti upadharya. Just as the air is situated in the sky, similarly, all the living beings are situated in Krishna. So the sky does not become burdened by the presence of air. Similarly, Krishna does not become burdened by the presence of or by sustaining the living entities. So 9.4 and 9.5 they sound contradictory, but actually they're not contradictions, they are paradoxical statements. So contradiction is basically two statements, two opposite sounding statements. When they're put together, it doesn't make any sense to us. But paradox is two seemingly opposite statements are put together to convey a deeper meaning. And they are put together in a contradictory way. They are phrased in a contradictory way to catch our attention. Because if they were not phrased in that way, that subtle thing will miss our attention. So that is the reason it is basically, presented in this way. Now, because Krishna's relationship with the material world is inconceivable, different people understand it differently. So he is going to describe all those people in the 9th chapter. But he gives in the 9.10, he gives like a sutra to understand his relationship with the material world. So he says, Maya dhyakshena prakriti suyate sacharacharam hetunanena konteya jagadvi parivartate. Maya dhyakshen, in my supervision, adi aksha, adi means to see, aksha, adi means from above, aksha means to see. So Maya adhyakshena prakriti, prakriti is working under my supervision, and then basically it does everything that needs to be done. So Krishna is the overseer of prakriti. So that is the sutra, and then he starts describing the different people who understand Krishna's relationship differently. So first he talks about the Mayavadis. So he says, so just now in my 9.10, he had said that, Prakriti is, but the Mayavadi idea is that Krishna is a product of Prakriti. He is a product of Maya. So he condemns their understanding. Okay, I see a message on my screen. Your connection is unstable. Am I audible to everyone?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay,
Yes,
I was getting a message. Your connection is unstable.
There was one little glitch, but that's fine. We could still.
So 9.10, Krishna had said he is the overseer of the Prakriti, and Mayavadi idea is that he is a product of Prakriti, he is a product of Maya. So he condemns their understanding. Avajananti mam mudha manushim tanumashritam param bhavam ajananto mama bhuta maheshwaram. Fools deride me when I descend in the human form. They do not know my transcendental nature as the supreme lord of all that be. And if you remember, Krishna had also condemned the Mayavadi idea in the 7th chapter, 7.26. He had said, Avyaktam vyaktim apannam manyate mam abuddhaya. Param bhava majananto. The same word that is used here, param bhava majananto, came in 7.26 also. But he had said, mam avyayam anuttamam. I am imperishable and I am the best, anuttamam. But here he's saying, Mam Bhuta Maheshwaram, I am the Lord of all, I am the great Lord of all living entities. So he condemns their idea, but he takes it one level deeper. And then he says, what is the consequence of this understanding? So 9.12 he describes Moghasha Mogha Karmano, Mogha Jnana Vichetasaha, Rakshasim Asurim Chaiva, Prakritim Mohinim Shritaha. All their endeavors will be frustrated. Moghasha, Mogha Karmano, and Mogha Jnana, their endeavors of knowledge, their virtuous activities, the culture of knowledge, everything will be frustrated. And something more frightening is saying, Rakshasim Asurim Chaiva. They will attain the prakriti of Rakshasas and Asuras. So Rakshasim Prakriti is tamasic, mode of ignorance, and Asuri Prakriti is rajasic, mode of passion. So they will acquire these two Prakritis, So that's what Krishna is saying. And then he starts talking about people who correctly understand. So in 9.11 and 12, people who completely misunderstand Krishna. And 9.13 and 14, he describes people who perfectly understand Krishna. Mahatmanas tu mam partha daivim prakritim ashrita bhajante ananya manaso gyatva bhutadim avyayam. Now he says that his pure devotees. So this is the first time Krishna is explicitly talking about his pure devotees. He is describing their activities. But he starts with the word Mahatma. Now this Mahatma is a very exalted word, and this comes only twice or thrice in the Gita, and then he always uses this in reference to the devotees, pure devotees, not just devotees. So bhajante ananya manaso, they worship Krishna with ananya manaso, undeviated mind. And what do they know? Gyatva bhutadim avyam. They understand that I am bhutadi, I am the origin of all living entities, and I am avyaya, I am imperishable. Mayavadi idea is that the form of Krishna after his leelas are over, it goes and merges back into Brahman. So it perishes, Krishna's form. But he's saying, I am imperishable. My form is imperishable. And then he starts describing people who he further describes the activities of the pure devotees. Satatam kirtayantu mam yatantascha dridvrataha namashantescha mam bhaktya nitya yukta upasate. Always chanting my glories, endeavoring with great determination, bowing down before me. These great souls perpetually worship me with devotion. So 9.13 and 14, 2 verses, he glorifies his devotees. So he describes people who perfectly understand Krishna, and then he starts describing people who partially understand Krishna. So their understanding is not accurate, but at least partially it is correct. So jnana yagyena chapyanya yajanto mam upasate ekatvena prithaktvena bahudha vishvato mukham. So jnana yagya is people who are doing jnana yagya, cha anya, and others, and by worshipping Krishna by other methods. So what are the other methods? Ekatvena means people who identify themselves with Krishna. Basically, they are the Brahmavadis, the impersonalists. And Prathaktvena Bahuda is demigod worshippers. And Vishwato Mukham, basically Vishwato Mukham are people who worship the universal form. So he describes these 3 categories of people. And then in further verses 9.16 to 9.19, he talks about the Vishwarup Upasak, the worshippers of the universal form. And 9.20 and 21, he talks about the demigod worshippers. So very classic verse, Prabhupada quotes this many times, 9.20 and 21 both. So Traividyamam Soma Paputa Papa Yagge Rishtva Swargatim Prarthayante Te Punyamasadya Surendra Lokam Ashnanti Divyan Divideva Bhogan. So basically here Krishna is talking about the Karma Kandis. Karma Kand is basically people who are performing some ritualistic activities for the purpose of sense gratification. So Krishna says, those who study the Vedas and drink the Soma juice, seeking the heavenly planets, worship me indirectly. Purified of sinful reactions, they take birth on the pious heavenly planet of Indra, where they enjoy godly delights. So first Krishna takes them to the top, to heaven, and right in the next verse, he brings them crashing down to the earth. Tetam bhuktva swargalokam vishalam kshine punyamartyalokam vishanti evam traidharman anuprapanna gata gatam kama labhante. When they have thus enjoyed vast heavenly sense pleasure and the results of their pious activities are exhausted, they return to this mortal planet again. Thus, those who seek sense enjoyment by adhering to the principles of the three Vedas achieve only repeated birth and death. So, gata gatam kama labhante. They come, they go, but they don't attain anything lasting. They just keep going back into that circle. They go to the Swarga and then they again fall down. Then again they will do some pious activities. Again they might go back, but again they will fall down. So they are always. So Prabhupada explains that what is that merry-go-round? It just goes round and round like this. Sometimes you go up and then you come down. Then you go up, then you go down like that. So very classic analogy Prabhupada uses to describe this. And then Krishna contrasts this with his pure devotees. How they are different from the demigod worshippers. He says, Ananyas chintayanto mam ye janah paryupasate tesham nitya abhiyuktanam yogakshemam vahamyaham. But those who always worship me with exclusive devotion, meditating on my transcendental form, to them I carry what they lack and I preserve what they have. So Krishna says that my pure devotees, I personally come and take care of them. I basically preserve what they have, and whatever they lack, I provide it to them, so they don't have to worry about anything. So he continues that contrast between his devotees and the demigod worshippers. Yepi anya devata bhakta yajante shraddhayanvitah tepi mam eva kaunteya yajante avidhi purvakam. So first he says yepi anya devata bhakta. So very clearly anya devata. So the worshippers of other demigods, other gods, those who are devotees of other gods and who worship them with faith actually worship only me, O son of Kunti, but they do so in a wrong way. Avidhi purvakam. They worship indirectly. They are worshipping me, but they are worshipping in an incorrect way. Avidhi purvakam. So what is that avidhi purvakam? Krishna describes in the next verse. He says, Aham hi sarva yajnanam bhokta cha prabhureva cha natumam abhijananti tatvenatas chavantite. I am the only enjoyer and master of all sacrifices. Therefore, those who do not recognize my true transcendental nature fall down. Chavantite. They ultimately fall down. So the word chavantite is very emphatic here. So the demigod worshippers are indirectly worshipping Krishna, but if they don't come to the correct understanding, if they don't understand that Krishna is the original enjoyer, Krishna is the original supreme personality, then because they don't have that connection in their consciousness, ultimately they will fall down. Chavantite. And then he gives the general principle. So those who worship the demigods will take birth among the demigods. Those who worship the ancestors go to the ancestors. Those who worship ghosts and spirits will take birth among such beings. And those who worship me will live with me. So that is what Krishna says in 9.25. And now he has talked about devotional service, but how to practice devotional service, then he describes that. Patram pushpam phalam toyam yome bhaktya prayachati tad aham bhakti upharitam ashnami prayatatmanaha. If one offers me with love and devotion a leaf, a flower, a fruit, or water, I will accept it. Just offer me a leaf or a flower or a fruit or water, But what is the essential component is with love and devotion. So that is the very essential. Just you give me anything simple, just a leaf. What is the value of one leaf? And actually, Acharya has explained that this leaf is actually tulsi leaf, not just any ordinary leaf. So you have to offer tulsi leaf or a flower or a fruit, just one fruit, or just some water, but offer it with love and devotion and I will accept it. But then he further describes that, there are so many other things that people also do. So he says, yad karosi yad ashnasi yad juhosi dadasi yad tapashyasi konteya tat kurushva madarpanam. Whatever you do, whatever you eat, whatever you offer or give away, and whatever austerities you perform, do that, O son of Kunti, as an offering to me. So he describes how to perform devotional service in these two verses. And then he talks about, how much he loves his devotees. My devotees, even if they perform the most abominable activities, but if they are fixed in devotion, they should be considered as saintly. Apiche suduracharo bhajate mamananya bhak sadhure savamantavya samayagda visito hisaha. Even if one commits the most abominable action, if he is engaged in devotional service, he is to be considered saintly. Sadhure savamantavya, because his properly situated in his determination. Samyak vyavasito hi saha. Their determination is rightly placed. Now, one may ask, now if a person is committing, abominable actions, how can he be considered sadhu? So Krishna says, Shipram bhavati dharmatma shachvat shantim nigacchati. He quickly becomes righteous and attains lasting peace. And we may say, okay, if he becomes righteous, then it is okay. But what if he doesn't become righteous? What then? Krishna says, Kantaya pratijanihi name bhaktya pranishyati. Still he says, Krishna, O son of Kunti, declare it boldly that my devotee never perishes. Even if it never becomes righteous, still, I will personally come and take care of him. So just go and, he says to Arjuna, just go and declare it, go with drums and bugles in a public assembly and declare it boldly, my devotee will never perish. And further, so 9.29, that's my 9.30 and 31, he actually had talked about some accidental fall downs. Devotee is fixed in devotional service, but accidentally he falls down. So he is protected. He should be considered saintly. But then in the 9.32, he talks about people who have inherent shortcomings. They are born in pap yoni. Mam hi parth vyapashritya yepis yu pap yoneya. Striyo vaishyas tatha shudras tepi yanti param gatim. He says, O son of Pritha, those who take shelter in me, though they be of lower birth, women, Vaishyas, and Shudras, can attain the supreme destination. So, actually, Krishna glorifies bhakti in three different ways in this chapter. First, he says that I personally come and take care of my devotees' needs, whatever, and they will get lasting results, and I will provide to them personally. Yogakshemam vahamyam. So that is one way he glorifies. Second is, even if a devotee temporarily falls down for some reason, still he is protected. He will again become righteous. And third is, even if a person is already fallen, he is born in pap yoni, still he can be elevated. Just by practicing devotional service, he can be elevated. So very emphatically he glorifies devotional service in the 9th chapter. He pours out his heart. So then he says, Arjuna, if this bhakti is so glorious, why don't you practice this bhakti? You are a Raja Rishi, you will surely be elevated, Arjuna. Please practice this devotional service. Kim punar brahmanah punya bhaktas Raja Rishyas tatha anityam asukham lokam imam prapya bhajasvavam. So how much more this is so of the righteous brahmanas, the devotees and the saintly kings. So Arjuna falls into this category, saintly king. Therefore, having come to this temporary miserable world, engage in loving service unto me. So Krishna had used the same words. This Anityam Asukham Lokan had come in the 8th chapter also. What was that? Anyone remembers in the 8th chapter? Anyone? Okay, so the same words were repeated in the 8th chapter. So there the word. I think someone wants to say something. Okay, so there.
Dukhalayam Ashashvatam?
Yes, Mataji, thank you. So Dukhalayam Ashashvatam was used. So Dukhalaya is full of miseries, and here he says Asukham. So there is no happiness. There he had said Dukhalaya is full of miseries, and there he said Ashashvatam, temporary. Here also he says Anityam, that is also temporary. So twice Krishna had branded this material world as place where there is no happiness and there is no eternity. It's temporary world. So having come to this temporary miserable world, just engage in loving service unto me. So basically we have got a bad bargain and we have to make the bad bargain good. So the only way we can make the bad bargain good is by practicing devotional service. That is the only way to make this bad bargain good. And then he speaks the classic verse 9.34. Chakravarti Pad explains this is the essence of Bhagavad Gita. Man mana Yaji mam namaskuru, mam evashyasi yuktevam atmanam mat parayanaha. Engage your mind always in thinking of me, become my devotee, offer obeisances to me and worship me. Being completely absorbed in me, surely you will come to me. So that is how the 9th chapter ends. And the 10th chapter is, again, the name of the chapter is the opulence of the absolute, the Vibhuti Yoga. He's going to speak about his Vibhutis in the 10th chapter. So again, there is no question from Arjuna. And Krishna is ecstatic. He has just glorified devotional service. He likes to talk about devotional service. He has poured out his heart, how much he loves his devotees. So again, he continues speaking in the 10th chapter without any question from Arjuna. Sfurti, as I had mentioned. Spontaneously he describes in the 10th chapter. He continues speaking. Bhuya eva mahabaho shinu me paramam vachah yatteham priyamanaya vakshyami hitkamaya. Now listen here again, O mighty Arjuna, because you are my dear friend. For your benefit, I shall speak to you further, giving knowledge that is better than what I have already explained. So for your benefit, I am speaking, Arjuna. Hear this very attentively. He's saying to Arjuna. And then he describes that how knowledge about Krishna is very rare. He says that nobody actually knows me, neither the demigods, neither the demons, neither the great sages know me. But who can know me? Only a devotee can know me. So name vidu surgana, and that is how he describes that. Prabhavam na maharshyaha. And what is it that they don't know? Aham adir hi devana maharshinam cha sarvashaha. I am the origin of all the devatas and also the maharishis, and therefore because I am their origin, they don't know about me, they don't fully understand me. So the knowledge about Krishna is extremely rare. And then from 10.8 to 10.11 he speaks the Chaturshloki Bhagavad Gita. So Sripad Ramanujacharya explains that this is the summary of the Gita. In these 4 verses, Krishna gives the full summary of the Gita. And this is like a what do we call it? Condensed Gita in one sense. So 10.8 first he describes his supreme position, very similar to what he had said in the 7.7 Mattaha Parataram Na Anyat. Here he says, Aham sarvasya prabhavo mattaha sarvam pravartate iti matva bhajante mam buddha bhava samanvitha. I am the source of all spiritual and material words. Everything emanates from me. The wise who perfectly know this engage in my devotional service and worship me with all their hearts. And in the next verse, again, Prabhupada translates this very nicely. Machchittaha madgatha prana bodhayantaha parasparam kathayantascha mam nityam tushyanti cha ramanti cha. So machchitta actually means, they are fixed in my consciousness, where Prabhupada translates this as the thoughts of my pure devotees dwell with me. Very beautiful translation he does. Actually, the pure devotees, Krishna becomes their mental home. Krishna is basically, the default thoughts are about Krishna. So all of us have our own default thoughts. When we don't have anything to do, then automatically our mind goes somewhere in certain thoughts. Someone may think about their children, someone may think about their wife or whatever, cricket. People have their own default thoughts. But here Krishna says that, the thoughts of my pure devotees dwell in me. So the default thoughts of a devotee is about Krishna, and their lives are fully devoted to my service. And they derive great satisfaction and bliss from always enlightening one another and conversing about me. So we may say, okay, that is fine, but how do the devotees get the knowledge? Because it is essential to get the knowledge to get out of the material world. So Krishna says in the next verse, he makes it very clear. He says, Tesham satata yuktanam bhajatam priti purvakam dadami buddhi yogam tam yena mam upayanti te. To those who are constantly devoted to serving me with love, I give the understanding by which they can come to me. And how does he give that understanding? Again, he describes that in the next verse, 10.11. This is also part of the Chaturshloki. Tesham evanukam partham aham ajnanajam tamaha nashayami atma bhavastho jnana deepena bhasvata. To show them special mercy, I, dwelling in their hearts, destroy with the shining lamp of knowledge the darkness born of ignorance. So he says, I personally, I'm there in their hearts as Paramatma, and with the shining lamp of knowledge, I destroy the darkness from within their hearts. Now, actually, Krishna in these 4 verses, glorifies bhakti and his own self, so emphatically that Arjuna is completely, shaken. And then, in one sense, the Acharyas explain that after speaking this, the Bhagavad Gita is over, because Arjuna says, Krishna, I accept everything that you have said. First, he glorifies Krishna. He says, Param Brahma, Param Dhama, Pavitram Paramam Bhavan, Purusham Shashvatam Divyam, Adi Devam Ajam Vibhum. So he says, Arjuna said, you are the supreme personality of Godhead, the ultimate abode, the purest, the absolute truth. You are the eternal, transcendental, original person, the unborn, the greatest. All the great sages such as Narada, Asita, Devala and Vyasa confirms this truth about you, and now you yourself are declaring it to me. So Param Brahma, Param Dhama. Actually, the Mayavadi says, Aham Brahmasmi. I am Brahma. So here Arjuna is saying, you are not Brahma, you are Param Brahma. You are the supreme transcendence, and you are the supreme abode, Param Dhama. And you are the supreme purifier, Pavitram Paramam. And Bhavan means you. And you are Purusham Shashvatam. You are eternally a Purusha. So the Mayavadi idea is that, actually Krishna's form gets merged into Brahman when his leelas are over. But Arjuna is saying, Purusham Shashvatam, you're eternally a Purusha. And what kind of Purusha? Divyam, you're a transcendental Purusha. And Adi Deva means you are the origin of the Devtas also. And Ajam and Vibhum, you are unborn, and Vibhum means you're the greatest. So actually Prabhupada explains in the purport that, there are many different interpretations of Gita, but there has to be one standard interpretation of Gita. And how do we know which is the standard interpretation of Gita? Then you have to compare your interpretation to the first student of Gita. So the first student of Gita was Arjuna, and Arjuna is actually telling his in these 6 verses here. Arjuna tells his understanding of what he has understood from Krishna. And if there was any doubt, about it, Krishna would have corrected Arjuna. But Arjuna's understanding, he gives this in the 6th verse, and Krishna accepts that understanding. So actually Prabhupada says that if our understanding is same as Arjuna's understanding, then we can say that yes, we have understood Krishna, or we have understood Bhagavad Gita. So that is the standard way of understanding Gita. And then actually Arjuna, so after this, Arjuna's doubts are all gone away. He says that, Krishna, I have accepted everything that you have said. And then we see that Arjuna's question, whatever he is asking, it is actually Acharya explained that he is asking for other people, for lokhitam rinam, for the benefit of others. And when he is asking for benefit of others, the first thing that he asks is, okay, the pure devotees can always think about you, but what about the common people? How can they think about you? How can they see you in this material world? Because their thoughts are material, they are fixed in the material world. So how can they see you in this material world? How can they think about you in this material world? Katham vidyam aham yogim tvam sada parichintayan keshu keshu cha bhaveshu chintyosi bhagavadmaya. O Krishna, O Supreme Mystic, how shall I constantly think of you? And how shall I know you? In what various forms are you to be remembered, O Supreme Personality of Godhead? And Krishna is delighted from Arjuna's inquiry. So he says, Hantate kathishyami dev divya hi atma vibhutayah pradhanayatah kuru shrestha nasti anto vistarasya me. So Hantate is the expression of joy. He's delighted hearing Arjuna's question. He says, yes, I will tell you of my splendorous manifestations, but only of those which are prominent, O Arjuna, for my opulence is limitless. So Krishna says it very clearly, my opulence is endless. If I keep talking about it, we won't be, your whole life we can talk about it. So Krishna says, I just speak about the prominent opulences. So he actually then talks about his vibhutis. So the name of the chapter is Vibhuti Yoga. So then he talks about how he is the best in the category. Of the Adityas, I am Vishnu. Of the lights, I am the radiant sun. Of the Maruts, I am Marichi. And among the stars, I am the moon. So actually he says that, so many people think that, the teachings in the 10th chapter, they are impersonalistic or they are pantheistic. But no, actually that is not the case, because Krishna talks about his representative oneness here. It's not a totalitarian oneness that Krishna is talking about here. It's more about representative oneness. Now, there are so many things in this material world, but not everything is attractive. Out of a particular group, only something can attract our consciousness. Like he says, among the mountains, I'm Himalayas. So generally people, when they think about Himalaya, they understand how great it is. So Krishna says, that is my representation. So then towards the end of the 10th chapter, he makes it clear. He gives the general principle. He says that, whatever attractive thing you see in this world, know that for sure, Arjuna, that the attractive potency of that thing is coming from me. So in that sense, he is talking about his vibhutis, and then he gives something more interesting. Yachapi sarva bhutanam bijam tadaham Arjuna natadasti vinayatsyan maya bhutam characharam. I am the generating seed of all existence. There is no being, moving or non-moving, that can exist without me. So actually he says, nothing can actually exist without me, Arjuna. So and then he concludes the 10th chapter by saying, but what need is there, Arjuna, for all this detailed knowledge? With a single fragment of myself, I pervade and support this entire universe. Just with a single fragment, Krishna is saying. And this verse 10.42 becomes the impetus for the 11th chapter. Arjuna asks, please show me, how do you pervade this material world? Krishna had said, just with one single fragment, I pervade this whole material world. So let's see what Arjuna asks in the 11th chapter. So the name of the 11th chapter is the universal form, the display of the Virat Rupa, universal form. So right in the beginning, Arjuna asks, he says, Drishtum ichhami te rupam aishwaryam purushottama. O greatest of all personalities, O supreme form, though I see you here before me in your actual position as you have described yourself, I wish to see how you have entered into this cosmic manifestation. So the same thing that Krishna had said, Arjuna is asking now, I want to see that form of yours. So he said, conceptually you have described it to me, but I want to see it. How can I understand this? I want to visualize it. So please show it to me. And then he qualifies his request. He says, Manya se yadi tat shakyam maya drishtum iti prabhu. If you think I am qualified, if you think I can behold your form, please show that form to me. So he is making a request like that to Krishna. And then in this chapter, we see that the Vishwarupa is described 3 times. First Krishna describes what Arjuna is going to see, then Sanjay describes what Arjuna is seeing, and then Arjuna himself describes what he is seeing on the battlefield. So that triple description comes in the 11th chapter. So the first description of Arjuna is Aneka Bahudar Vaktra Netram, O Lord of the universe, so universal form, I see in your body many, many arms, bellies, mouths, and eyes, expanded everywhere, without limit. I see in you no end, no middle, and no beginning. So actually, in the Vishwarupa, what you see is there is many different personalities, and they're decorated with different garments, different garlands, with different weapons, and there are many different personalities that are there. Many mouths, many bellies, many eyes. So all that is there, and Arjuna also sees all the living entities of this universe. So he sees right from the top, Lord Brahma is there, to the end. He sees all Lord Shiva is there, all the devatas are there, and then at the bottom of the universe is the Sheshana. Shesha is holding the universe. So Urgam sa Divyam, that is how it comes in this chapter. So he sees the divine serpent who is holding the universe on his hood. So he sees that also. So until the 19th verse of 11th chapter, Arjuna is Vismit, he is amazed to see this form. But slowly after the 19th verse, this Vismaya changes into Bhaya. Bhaya is fear. He becomes fearful. So what makes him fearful is that he sees that actually all the different personalities, all the warriors are entering the mouth of the universal form of the Kala Rupa. So he says, all of the sons of Dhritarashtra, along with their allied kings and Bhishma and Drona and Karna and our chief soldiers also, they are rushing into your fearful mouths. And some I see trapped with heads smashed between your teeth. So actually the mouth of the Vishwarupa, it is protruding, and these warriors, when they're entering the mouth, their heads are getting smashed in the teeth. So here it is described, damstra karalani bhayanakani. There are very horrible looking teeth are there in this mouth, and their heads are getting trapped in the teeth, and they are getting smashed, and then the skull is cracking, and the blood is coming out full force. And then what is the Vishwarupa doing? He is licking the blood. So this is a horrific scene. So Arjuna completely becomes bewildered. He's very fearful, and then he asks, Akhya mein hi ko bhavan ugra rupo. I'm sorry, I'm getting a call. 1 second. Okay, I'm sorry, there was a call from the temple. I thought I lost connection. Okay, so Arjuna asks, Akhya mein hi ko bhavan ugra rupa. Oh Lord of Lords, oh fierce of form, please tell me who you are. He says, please tell me who you are and what is your mission. So he asked that question. He's not able to identify Krishna with the Kalarupa now. He has lost that connection that Krishna is manifesting the Kalarupa. So then the Kalarupa responds, Kalosmi lokakshay krit prabha, the classic verse, Kalosmi lokakshay krit prabha, the time I am the destroyer of the world, and I have all people. And then he says, with the exception of you, the Pandavas, all the soldiers here on the both sides will be slain. So he continues speaking. He says, therefore get up and fight and win the glory. Very clearly he says, Tasmat tvam utishta yasho labhasva. Just get up and fight and win the glory of winning the battle. Conquer your enemies and enjoy a flourishing kingdom. They are already put to death by my arrangement, and you, O Sabyasachi, can be but an instrument in the fight. By my arrangement, I have already killed them. And nimitta matram bhava Sabyasachi, just become an instrument in my hands, and you will get the glory. And then basically the Kal Rupa also says, I have Drona, Bhishma, Jayadratha, Karna, and all other great warriors have already been destroyed by me. Therefore, kill them and do not be disturbed. Simply fight and you will vanquish your enemies in the battle. And after hearing this, Arjuna is a little comforted, but again, his situation is still very fearful. As Sanjay describes here, he says, Etat Shrutva Vachanam Keshavasya Kritanjalir Vepamanaha Kiriti. Vepamanaha Kiriti is almost like, there are two opposite words. So Kiriti is a very powerful Kshatriya. Kshatriyas are never fearful, but Vepamana, he is trembling in fear. And then it says sa gadgadam, his voice is choking up, he's so fearful that his voice is choking up, he's faltering. And bhita, his mind is filled with fear. So he says, O king, after hearing these words from the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the trembling Arjuna offered obeisances with folded hands again and again. He fearfully spoke to Lord Krishna in a faltering voice as follows. So then after that, Arjuna starts speaking. He first glorifies the universal form, and then he starts asking for forgiveness. So he asks forgiveness, very nice verse. Sakheti matva prasabham yudaktam, he Krishna, he Yadav, he Sakheti, ajanata mahimananta vedam, maya pramadat pranaye navapi. He says, thinking of you as my friend, I addressed you rashly. Sometimes I called you Krishna, sometimes I called you Yadav, sometimes I called you a friend. I did not know your glories, my dear Lord. Ajanata mahima ananta vedam. I did not know your glories, my dear Lord. Maya pramadat pranayena vapi. Maybe it is because of my love or because of my madness. I don't know, but please forgive me. And sometimes, he says, sometimes by in front of others, sometimes alone, sometimes while eating, sometimes while laying down on the bed, so many times I may have offended you, so please forgive me. And then he gives some relationships, and he says, Piteva putrasya sakheva sakhyu priya priyayarhasi deva sodhum. Just as a friend forgives a friend, just as a husband forgives his wife, just as a father forgives his son, similarly, please forgive me. So he asks that kind of forgiveness to Krishna. And then he says, I want to see some other form. Tenaiva rupena chaturbhujena sahasrabaho bhava vishwamurte. I want to see that form of yours, your four-handed form. That is what Arjuna says. And then Krishna, actually, he says that, yes, you said you have been perturbed and bewildered by seeing this horrible feature of mine. Now let it be finished. My devotee, be free again from all disturbances. With a peaceful mind, you can now see the form you desire. So actually then Krishna shows the four-handed form and the two-handed form again. So Sanjay describes here the Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna, having spoken thus to Arjuna, displayed his real four-armed form and at last showed his two-armed form, thus encouraging the fearful Arjuna. So after seeing this form, Krishna describes the glory of the two-handed form. He says, my dear Arjuna, this form of mine you are now seeing is very difficult to behold. Even the demigods are ever seeking the opportunity to see this form, which is so dear. Devapyasya rupas, even the demigods, they are also hankering to see this form always, but they are not able to see it. So we had discussed, if you remember, that Krishna appears once in a day of Brahma. So to see Krishna's form is extremely rare, even for the demigods. And then he speaks further about it. He says that the form you are seeing with your transcendental eyes cannot be understood simply by studying the Vedas, nor by undergoing serious penances, nor by charity, nor by worship. It is not by these means that one can see me as I am. So how can Krishna be seen? How can Krishna be known? Only by pure devotional service. Bhaktya tu ananya shakya. My dear Arjuna, only by undivided devotional service can I be understood as I am, standing before you, and can thus be seen directly. Only in this way can you enter into the mysteries of my understanding. So he makes it very clear, only by pure devotional service can I be known. And then the classic verse, Prabhupada calls this verse as the essence of the Bhagavad Gita. My dear Arjuna, he who engages in my pure devotional service, free from the contaminations of fruitive activities and mental speculation, he who works for me, who makes me the supreme goal of his life, and who is friendly to every living being, he certainly comes to me. So this is how the 11th chapter ends. And the 12th chapter, the name of the 12th chapter is Devotional Service. So Arjuna had just seen the universal form, and Arjuna now understands that universal form is coming from Krishna. But he also know that there is also the unmanifested, the Brahman, and there are many people who worship the Brahman. So he wants to know, who are better, people who are worshipping the personal form, or people who worship the unmanifested Brahman. So he asked that question very clearly, to Arjuna, to Krishna. He says, which are considered to be more perfect, those who are always properly engaged in your devotional service, or those who worship the impersonal Brahman, the unmanifested? And Krishna also answers with equal clarity. He says, the Supreme Personality of Godhead said, those who fix their minds on my personal form and are always engaged in worshipping me with great and transcendental faith are considered by me to be most perfect. So very clearly Krishna answers this. And then he further says, but those who worship the unmanifested, that which lies beyond the perception of the senses, the all-pervading, inconceivable, unchanging, fixed and immovable, the impersonal conception of the absolute truth, by controlling the various senses and being equally disposed to everyone, such persons engaged in the welfare of others, welfare of all, at last achieve me. But he then further says, for those whose minds are attached to the unmanifested, impersonal feature of the Supreme, advancement is very troublesome. To make progress in that discipline is always difficult for those who are embodied. So two words he used, klesho and dukkha. Klesh and dukkha, it is very difficult, and it is very slow also. And for people who are embodied, we all are embodied, we have this material body. So he says, for people who are embodied, it is very difficult to actually make progress in that discipline. And then he contrasts it with his devotional service. But those who worship me, giving up all their activities unto me and being devoted to me without deviation, engaged in devotional service and always meditating upon me, having fixed their minds upon me, O son of Pritha, for them I am the swift deliverer from the ocean of birth and death. Tesham aham samuddarta. He says, I personally come and, deliver them. Mrityu samsara sagarat, from this ocean of from the ocean of this material world. I personally come and take care of them. I pick them from this material world and take them with me to the spiritual world. So there he had said it is dukkha and klesha, and here it is he is saying, I personally deliver, swiftly deliver, quickly I deliver them. So here he makes it very clear that it is easy and it is quick, the devotional service. And then he is so eager that everyone should practice devotional service. He gives various levels, in which devotional service can be practiced. So first he says the topmost level, just fix your mind upon me, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and engage all your intelligence in me. Thus you will live in me always, without a doubt. But if you cannot do this, in the next verse he says that at least practice the regulations of devotional service. My dear Arjuna, O winner of wealth, if you cannot fix your mind upon me without deviation, then follow the regulative principles of Bhakti Yoga. In this way, develop a desire to attain me. But if you cannot do that also, then at least, just work for me, just do something for me, that is what he says here. And then he said, if you cannot also do that, then at least work from some good cause, just give away, or just do whatever you want to do and give the results to me. That is how Krishna says it. And then if you cannot even do that, then give away your results for some good cause. That is how. So he give various various levels of devotional service, and then he summarizes it also. If you cannot take to this practice, then engage yourself in cultivation of knowledge. Better than knowledge, however, is meditation, and better than meditation is renunciation of the fruits of action. For by such renunciation, one can attain peace of mind. And then he starts talking about the different qualities of a devotee. In about 8 verses, he describes what are the different qualities of a devotee. So he talks about different sets of qualities of different devotees. And what is common over there is material equanimity. He says you have to be equipoised in happiness and distress. That comes very repeatedly in the qualities that he describes. And then he concludes by saying that those who follow this imperishable path of devotional service and who completely engages themselves with faith, making me the supreme goal, are very, very dear to me. Bhaktaste ativa me priya. They are extremely dear to me. So that is how he concludes this 12th chapter. So actually, what Krishna has done in these 12 chapters is that he has first established the supremacy of bhakti over Jnana Yoga. Then he has established the supremacy of bhakti over Ashtanga Yoga. Then he has also established the supremacy of bhakti over the demigod worship. And then he has described that how much he loves his devotees. He has poured out his heart. and he also gives various levels that people can follow. If they cannot fit in the topmost stage, at least in one of the lower stages they can fit themselves. And then he had talked about how even the people who are already fallen, the bhakti is so potent that even if they follow this devotional service, even they can be elevated to the topmost position. So in that sense, Krishna had actually established bhakti as the topmost form of yoga, and then he has established that how in the Bhagavad Gita, so what is coming out in these 6 chapters is that actually bhakti is the way, bhakti is the best. In every sense, Krishna has established that here in these 12 chapters. And if we compare the bhakti that is given in Bhagavad Gita, and if we compare it with what is given in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, we see there is a difference. So here the bhakti that is given is more stoic in the sense that it has basically become more become materially grounded. Don't be so much disturbed by happiness and distress in this material world. That is how it comes. And then also perform some activities that are performed in devotional service. But in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, we see that so it is more so it is like singing, dancing, crying tears of ecstasy, swooning, thinking about Krishna. So there the spiritual emotions are described very very emphatically, but that is not described here in the Bhagavad Gita. And the simple reason is because Arjuna is materially overwhelmed right now. He's overwhelmed with material emotions, and Krishna can't directly talk about spiritual emotions right here. So if we consider, there is this positive axis, there is a negative axis, and then there is a zero. So like this. So if someone has material emotions, so first from the material emotions he has to rise to material equanimity. And once he has come to material equanimity, then he has to rise to spiritual emotions. So that is the positive axis. So in that sense, Bhagavad Gita first brings the people who are down, grounded in the material emotions, first rise to material equanimity and also perform activities in devotional service. And from there, you can rise to to spiritual emotions, exhibiting spiritual emotions. So that is how there is a difference between the bhakti that is talked about in the Gita and in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. So I stop here. We don't have much time. I just see if there any comments or any questions about what we have discussed.
So I just have a question. I had actually never noticed that in the 8th chapter that Hare Krishna Mahamantra comes about 5 times. Why did you say that was the case?
No, I was just emphasizing that the theme of the chapter is attaining the supreme. So how do we attain the supreme? So Krishna talks about thinking about Krishna at the time of death. So Prabhupada focuses on chanting the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. That is, just by chanting the Hare Krishna mantra, we can attain Krishna. If we become fixed in our chanting, and if we chant attentively, so that is what Prabhupada, that is the theme that is coming out. So full Hare Krishna Mahamantra comes 5 times in the first 10 verses of the 8th chapter.
Good emphasis, huh?
Yeah. Any other comments or questions?
Very nice summarization, bro, for 12 chapters.
Yeah, I think I went too fast. There are no other comments.
I enjoyed that gist capsule form. It was fast, yes, but that also it's like how much of the syllabus have I missed, kind of thing,
Yeah.
Awakening call. So go get back there and start reading.
So this is just 7 to 12. There are also 1 to 6 chapters. So
Right,
that
right.
is also very overwhelming in one sense. Yeah.
So I was wondering, just like you have conducted these 5-6 lectures, can do you have these recorded, like 1 to 6, 7 to 12, like this? Just overview.
I don't think we have. So today thing is being recorded 7 to 12. So yesterday and today what we did is recorded. It's there on Facebook.
Okay.
But I
Because
don't think.
what I notice whenever I speak with others who are kind of totally into present day Maya, and they just don't want to come anywhere close to Gita, right?
Yeah.
So to get them interested, even to get them to start following a daily ritual of listening to Bhagavad Gita for 1 hour, it is a tough call.
Yeah.
Even for those who are actually interested in stuff like this. I noticed, I asked a few of my friends.
Right.
So those who are naturally with on the Bhakti Marga, they find it easier. They'll come willingly.
Yeah.
So if we have something like, okay, what's there in the first 6 chapters? What's there in 6 to 12? What's there in the chapters after that?
Mhm.
What the Western society calls as a teaser,
Yeah. Yeah, actually, if you see the Bhagavad Gita as it is, that is there, you already have it, I know. So there is an introduction there where Prabhupada writes in the 30, I think there are 30 pages. In 30 pages, he
Right.
gives
In this book, there is that introduction.
yeah. So that gives the full summary of Gita,
No, that is fine for those who are actually interested. They'll
Yeah,
come and
right.
they'll read the book.
Right. So
To,
just give that
to
at least
evoke
if
that need to read the book.
Mhm. So that what
See,
also
most of the people I spoke with, what they said was, "Oh no, that is very tough." So they think of it as a insurmountable obstacle. So they don't even think about trying it.
right. So actually, what um, uh, BBT has also done is, so what they have done is they have made a very small book. So they have taken that introduction of Bhagavad Gita from the Bhagavad Gita out from there, and they have made a very small book, very handy book. It's like this size and very, very, this called Introduction to Bhagavad Gita. The name itself is Introduction to Bhagavad Gita. So that is one way if you want to give that small book to
So
them,
that will
and
be
then
good.
yeah, they can just read that. They don't have to actually pick up if they think, if they get scared just by looking at the Gita.
Right. I mean,
So
they look at this 2-inch thick book and then say,
right,
"Oh no, I'm not going to be." Because the perception is that that entire book is just Sanskrit shlokas, one after the other.
right. No, that is right. So you can actually give that. That way, at least they will get a, that teaser, as you said. So, but in that teaser, Prabhupada gives the full essence of Bhagavad Gita also. So it's a very nice introduction that is there. I love it. So you can also try reading it today and see if that makes sense to you. And if you like it, then we have that small book, Introduction to Bhagavad Gita,
Okay,
the
that will be
temple.
great.
Yeah, you can get that. And the other way is, I mean, obviously we have these sessions, and we can.
So whenever I've been talking to people, I've been re-emphasizing every time that no, I'm not available 7 to 8. I'm doing this. I'm attending the Gita. I'm attending.
Yeah.
So even if they think that I'm now nearing my 50 and this is what they do, at least they'll have it in their mind. Okay, when they near their 50, they have to start doing it.
Yeah, but actually we should start as soon as
We should
possible.
start probably in 30s or even before that.
Before that, actually, Prahlad Maharaj says that just from 5 years of age we should start spiritual consciousness.
Right.
So just 5 years of age, that is too soon for us. We can't even contemplate how by 5 years we can start. But
No, but
actually,
this 1 hour daily is a very amazing way. I mean, this was the norm in the olden days. I remember when I was a child, every day my grandmom used to take me to a temple for attending kirtan.
yeah,
So that was like the spiritual cleansing used to happen.
right.
We somehow lost that habit.
Yeah, in India, the only way of entertainment was these kind of session. There was no TV
Right.
and all that earlier. I remember I've heard that from many people. So yeah, I mean, if they are willing to come to these sessions, that would be good. Other way, and then other way is Prabhupada always says that give them a book, because when they have a book, they can always go back and refer to it. But when we speak to them about something, they might remember it for some time, but then they will eventually forget if they are not, constantly in touch. So I mean, both are important. If they can do both, that
Do
is,
you have like 1 minute WhatsApp messages?
yeah, we do.
So how can I get them and start circulating them?
Okay, actually, yeah, there is a
Something.
WhatsApp group. We can add you to that group, and
Okay.
you can keep getting those kind of messages there, and that way there are some small snippets are there,
Okay.
and then they're very
Because
hard-hitting snippets, not just they
because
hit
what
you
I have
hard.
started believing firmly after having taught swimming for so many years, I realized that there is a way to give medicine.
Right.
Every person has a different dose capability. Someone can take a spoon, someone can take a bowl, someone can just tolerate half a spoon. So you need to figure out if you want to give everyone the medicine, how do you give it to them? Okay. So I'll send you my number. I think you
No,
already
I
have
already,
it. So
yeah, I already have it. Yeah, I'll add you to that group, and you can start getting those messages then.
sure.
All right.
Thank
Okay,
you
I
so
think,
much.
yeah, I think we can stop here. It's almost time. Thank you,
Okay.
everyone. Thank you for joining. Hare
Thank you
Krishna.
so much.
Krishna Prabhu ji.
Vanchakalpatarubhyascha
Hare Krishna.
kripasindhubhyo cha
Thank you.
patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo
Namo
namaha.
Namaha.